I realized on my first day on Mohoani that something had gone terribly wrong. There were skeletons of seabirds littering the forest floor. I was invited to join an expedition to the island of Mohoani to study the Marquesas monarch in 2019. So a Marquesas monarch is an endangered songbird. There's only about 200 of them left in the world, and they're all found on just one tiny island. Now, Marquesas monarchs, they're quite perhaps dowdy looking little birds. The male and female are different from one another. So the male is sort of jet black little songbird, and the female is black and white. So she's sort of looks like she's wearing a tuxedo. When I heard about the island of Mohoani, I thought it would be this unblemished tropical South Pacific paradise. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's about 4,800 kilometers from the nearest continent, and no people live there. I realized on my first day on Mohoani that something had gone terribly wrong. On an island like Mohoani, it has these incredible cliff faces, which are absolutely perfect for nesting seabirds. And you would expect to see thousands and thousands of seabirds nesting on the sides of the island. But when we got there, we could not find just one breeding pair on the entire island. But when we looked around a little bit more, we realized there was no mystery as to what had happened to these seabirds. There were skeletons of seabirds littering the forest floor. And there was something quite unusual about these skeletons, because all they were the wings of the birds. That is the signature way that a cat dismembers its prey, separating the body from the wings. So we could see that domestic cats had been introduced to the island of Mohoani and had destroyed the seabird population. Working on Mohoani was incredibly hard, and it felt like everything that could go wrong went wrong. We were wild camping in 30 centigrade heat and having to trek through forest which didn't have any pathways in it or any trails. So it was constantly just clambering over boulders and fallen trees and through sort of spiky bushes and shrubs. And all of this was made even more difficult when half of the team came down with food poisoning. Oh, and to make matters worse, about a week or two into the trip, I managed to walk into the spiky leaves of a pandanus tree. And this meant that I had to pick out 40 hooked spines from my right thigh using a plier, which was just really, really unpleasant. I was working with an incredible team of people. All of the scientists were very experienced, but once a few things started going wrong on the expedition, group morale did decrease, and I think people just started to feel a little bit down because we realized that there was so much that was threatening the Marquesas monarch. One day when I was sort of walking back in from the field, and I was just feeling so tired, but when I was walking through the forest, I sort of looked up and saw a little sort of like flicker above me. And I realized that a baby Marquesas monarch had floated down and landed on a branch right above my head. And I was so excited. And I knew immediately that this was a baby Marquesas monarch because it had soft buff colored feathers and it was all quite fluffy. So I could tell that this little guy was fresh out of the nest. And this little bird started sort of fluttering around above me. And I mean, he flew right down in front of me and was just sort of checking me out and making little cheeping noises and was just so curious about who and what I was. Now, I had been taught how to make an approximation of a Marquesas monarch call by a Marquesan islander, so I thought now was the time to give it a go. So I made a few squeaky noises like this. And suddenly, two other birds flew down, a male and a female, clearly the mother and the father of this baby monarch. The female immediately went and flew over to her baby and sort of, started feeding it and fussing over it. And the male sort of came down even closer and started calling back to me whenever I made a call. So I would go, and he would call sort of even more loudly, and he started flicking up his tail and doing a little territorial dance, hopping back and forth on the branch that he was sitting on. And we sort of had this little conversation almost for about 10 minutes, and it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. It was my childhood dream to communicate with birds in some way. I would try every type of whistle, and to finally feel like I had actually had a moment where I made a call and a bird had heard it and flown down and investigated and called back. It was the most incredible feeling, actually. This felt like the first time in my life that I had ever had an encounter with a truly wild animal, where the animal was just simply curious about who I was. And these birds were so inquisitive and fearless that it was really quite extraordinary. I'm so used to birds flying away as soon as they see me. I actually get quite emotional when I think about it, because something that I know that these birds don't is that they're endangered, and that it's because of people that they're endangered. This experience changed me in quite a fundamental way. What I hadn't really realized before I had this encounter with the family of Marquesas monarchs was how we lose a certain innocence in animals and curiosity when we go into their homes and destroy them. There are so few places left in the world where humans haven't left an impact. And in these little pockets of untouched wilderness, the animals still may be just curious about people. And it just breaks my heart to think that we may one day live in a world where every animal is afraid of people. When it was just me and those birds, I totally forgot about everything else. I was just focused on observing them. And I mean, it's cliche to say, but time stopped still. And it felt like I was a child again, just completely unself-conscious and in the moment. And I hope that by working in documentaries that I can try and find cool animal stories to film, and that people will hopefully watch them and fall in love with the natural world in the way that I have.